About 3 years into teaching, I made a mistake that I still think about. A student of mine, I will call him Thomas, had been struggling for most of the semester, not with a language, with something underneath it. His attendance was dropping, his work, when it came in, had a quality of going through the motions. Something was wrong, but he was not saying so.
Did you ask him?
I sent an email, which was the first mistake. I wrote something careful and considered. I said I had noticed some changes and I wanted to check in, and I was available if he wanted to talk. It was a good email. It was exactly the wrong thing.
Why?
Because he read it and replied with something equally careful and considered. He said he was fine. Just busy, thank you for checking in. And I accepted that because the email had given both of us the option to stay on the surface. He could perform fine through the screen and I could feel like I had done my part by asking.
And nothing changed.
Nothing changed. Another 3 weeks of the same drift, and then one afternoon he stayed after class, not to ask a question, just to linger, and I asked him directly face to face what is actually going on, and the answer that came was nothing like what the email had produced.
What was it?
His father had been seriously ill for 2 months. He was sending money home. He was sleeping badly. He was ashamed of how his English had stopped improving, because all his energy was going elsewhere. And he had not said any of this because the email had felt like a form you fill out correctly and return, whereas the face-to-face was something he could not perform his way through.
The email gave him a place to hide.
The email gave both of us a place to hide. That is the thing I understood afterward. I had sent the email partly because I was also a little afraid of what the real conversation might be, and the email let me ask, without truly asking.
I have a version of this. It is about a client rather than a student, but the structure is the same.
Tell me.
I had a project a few years ago where something went wrong in the middle, a decision I had made about the direction of the work that the client had not expected and did not like. I found out through an email that was politely worded, but had a coldness in it that I recognized immediately. Something had shifted.
What did you do?
I replied by email, of course, because that was the medium we were in, and my reply was careful and professional. I explained my reasoning. I offered alternatives. I asked whether we could get on a call to discuss. They replied and said they would review what I had sent and come back to me.
And then?
And then a week passed and the energy stayed cold, and the project was technically still running, but something was broken underneath it. And eventually I stopped managing it by email and called and said, I think we need to see each other in person. Can we find half an hour this week?
How did they respond?
There was a pause and then they said yes. And when we sat across from each other, the conversation that happened bore almost no relation to the one we had been having over email, because face to face they could see that I was genuinely invested, that the decision had come from care about the work, not carelessness about them.
Which is much harder to see through a screen.
Almost impossible to see through a screen, because on a screen what you get is the managed version of a person, the version they have had time to compose. Face to face you get the real-time version, the one that adjusts as you speak, the one that cannot be edited before sending.
That real-time quality is the thing. You say something and you see immediately how it lands, and you can adjust before the next sentence. You are in a living conversation rather than an exchange of documents.
And the other person cannot sit with their interpretation of what you said for 2 days before responding, which is sometimes exactly what is needed and sometimes the worst possible thing.
When is sitting with it the worst possible thing?
When someone is already hurt or suspicious, when there is already a distance between you in that state, giving someone your words without your presence means they will interpret those words through the lens of whatever they are already feeling, and a careful email can read as cold. A warm email can read as trying too hard.
And face to face.
Face to face, your tone of voice corrects misreadings before they calcify. Your expression shows what the words alone cannot carry. You are present in a way that makes certain distortions harder to sustain.
There's also something about accountability. Being physically present with someone when you say a difficult thing creates a different kind of responsibility. You cannot close the laptop. You cannot step away. You are there in the consequence of what you have said in real time.
Which is uncomfortable, and also exactly what some conversations require.
So the question is, how do you know which conversations require it? How do you recognize the ones that cannot happen over text or phone?
I have a rough test. If the answer to the conversation might change the relationship permanently, if there is real hurt involved, if you have already tried a lighter medium and the air has not cleared, if the stakes are high enough that a misreading would be genuinely costly, those are the conversations that need the room.
Apologies that actually matter. Difficult truths you have been carrying. Endings of things, reconciliations.
Reconciliations, especially because a reconciliation is not just an exchange of information. It is a shared experience. You need to be in the same space for it to land as real.
The English for initiating this is worth knowing, because asking to meet in person for a serious conversation is itself a signal. The request tells the other person something before the meeting even happens.
I think we should talk in person. I do not want to do this over text. That sentence alone already communicates. What I have to say is too important for the medium we have been using.
Can we find time to meet properly? The word properly is doing a lot of work there. It implies that what has been happening so far has not been proper, that the real conversation has been deferred.
There is something I want to say to you, and I would rather say it face to face. That is more explicit. It names that you have something specific and that you have chosen the medium deliberately.
And from the other side, if someone asks you to meet in person and you sense the weight of it, the natural English is, of course, when works for you, or, yes, I think that makes sense. Both of those receive the request without demanding to know the content in advance.
And sometimes someone will ask, "Can you give me a sense of what this is about?" Which is understandable. Walking into a significant conversation without any context can feel destabilizing.
How do you handle that without either revealing everything in advance or being opaque in a way that creates anxiety?
Something like, "I want to talk about what happened between us and make sure we are okay," that names the territory without treating the conversation. It says, "This is about us, not about something external," and it signals that the intention is repair, not confrontation.
That framing matters because I think we need to talk carries its own dread. People hear those words and immediately assume the worst.
Can we find a time to catch up properly? I want to make sure we are on the same page. That is a softer version, less ominous, but it still communicates that something needs addressing.
What about when the other person is the one who is avoiding? When you need the face-to-face conversation and the other person keeps not being available?
That is where it gets genuinely hard because you cannot force someone into a room.
No.
And sustained avoidance is itself communication. It says, "I am not ready," or "I am not sure I want this conversation to happen," or "I am afraid of what the conversation will cost me."
And you have to decide whether to wait or to find a way to lower the threshold enough that they can step in.
Lowering the threshold might mean being very explicit that you are not looking for a confrontation. "I am not trying to relitigate anything. I just want to understand each other better, and I think we need to be in the same room for that." That sentence removes some of the threat.
Or it might mean starting smaller, not asking for the full conversation immediately. "Can we just get coffee? I have missed talking to you," starting with the relationship rather than the issue.
Which is actually what I have been thinking about with Wei.
I know
We have been talking by message carefully, pleasantly almost, and there is something kind about that, I think. We are both trying not to make it harder, but I also know that the real conversation cannot happen this way. Whatever the 5 months were, whatever the misunderstanding was.
Are you going to ask her to meet, pray?
I think so. Yes, I think that is what I have been working toward. Not consciously, but I think that is where this needs to go.
What is stopping you from asking her now?
She is in Singapore.
That is a practical obstacle, not the real one.
No, the real one is that asking to meet in person makes the whole thing more serious. It escalates the weight of it. And there is a part of me that has been hoping we could quietly find our way back without having to name what happened.
Can you?
I do not think so. Not fully. I think there is a conversation we have to be in the same room for, or at least on a real call, where I can see her face and she can see mine.
Then ask her.
I know.
There is a conversation you have been conducting in the wrong medium, something important that you have been trying to resolve through text or email, or by simply waiting and hoping the distance closes on its own. Think about what that conversation actually requires.
Is there someone you need to be in the same space with before anything real can happen between you?
That is the question worth sitting with today. I want to add something before we finish, because we have been talking about face-to-face as though it is always the braver choice, and I think that is mostly true, but I want to name the exception.
What is the exception?
There are situations where face-to-face is not the answer because the power dynamic makes it unsafe, where the person asking for the meeting has significantly more power, and the other person cannot freely say what they actually think because the room itself creates pressure.
Performance reviews that pretend to be open conversations.
Yes, or situations involving any kind of real imbalance in those cases. The protected distance of a written medium gives the less powerful person time and space to compose what they actually want to say without the real-time pressure of someone watching their face.
So the argument for face-to-face assumes a certain rough equality between the people involved.
Or at minimum, a genuine safety, where both people can say what is true without consequence. If that safety is not present, the intimacy of the same room can be a kind of trap rather than a kind of connection.
That is an important caveat.
I think so. Most of the conversations we are talking about happen between people who are more or less equal. Friends, colleagues at a similar level, a client and a freelancer who each need the other in those contexts. The face-to-face changes things for the better. In an unequal context, it might not.
There is also the question of what you do when geography makes in-person genuinely impossible, not as an excuse but as a real constraint.
Then the closest available alternative, a video call rather than a voice call. Seeing someone's face matters even through a screen in a way that hearing only a voice does not quite reach.
I have had conversations on video that felt genuinely present, where I forgot for stretches that we were not in the same room.
And conversations on video that felt like watching someone perform from behind glass.
The technology is the same in both cases. What is different is whether both people are actually there, whether they have set aside enough of everything else to be truly present.
Which is its own skill, being fully present on a screen rather than half there and half checking something else.
The face-to-face principle is really about presence, not just proximity.
Yes, that is a better way to put it. Some conversations require full presence, and full presence is easiest in the same room, but it is possible at a distance, if both people choose it.
There is a conversation you have been conducting in the wrong medium. Think about what it actually requires, not the words, the presence.
Is there someone you need to be fully present with before anything real can happen between you?